Oh, kind of an old style Efilism video, I think. Walk and talk. Just run down the story of this universe of life on Earth. What's going on here? So we start off with some sort of physics of the universe. Could be a recycling Big Bang, expansion, contraction, could be just oscillating the same energy over and over and over again. Maybe it's a one-time crack in the piece of the universe, in the forever, is somehow disturbed, and we have this grows out of it, like incrementally. Just how life evolved incrementally into its complexity. It all started with one little grain of stuff, and that grain created a stirring that created more grains and more errors and more grains and more errors, and generated the initial plasma. And now all these grains will be fly into space, separated by distance, to maybe start the whole insidious, crazy shit all over again, a zillion times over. Could be Adam and Eve grains. Oh my God, how horrible. But you don't need the Eve part or the Adam. You just need the Adim part. Anyway, you start the universe, then it does this thing. 5 billion years ago or so, 4.5, whatever. The universe is consolidating. Chunks of it are crashing into each other because of this mechanism of gravity, and they're coalescing into this substance, this mass, that's all leftover bits from supernovas of other stars. So there's some complexity to the elementary matter, a nice collection of the whole range of elements pretty much, and they consolidate into these planets revolving around a sun. And the Earth, being a certain distance from that sun, has a temperature conducive to liquefaction, to movement of the matter on the surface and probably in the interior, but it doesn't really matter. It creates enough temperature to maintain molecular activity. That molecular activity keeps banging elements against each other, pure elements, and they could create compounds. These compounds bang into more elements and other compounds and create more compounds. And so now we have chemistry is awake on planet Earth. It's not just 99.99% aluminum or some elemental substrate. It's now got a surface covered with an active chemistry, lots of different compounds being formed, and one of the compounds is likely RNA first, but whatever, doesn't matter. DNA style molecules, molecular proteins that are a collection of amino acids, and they have this property whereby they can be duplicated, that they have an attraction force that tends them to create reciprocals of themselves or copies of themselves. Either way, it wouldn't matter. It could be a reverse, and then the inverse is created when you make the new copy. It just doesn't really matter. But the point is that there are bonding properties, and a DNA molecule is born in the sense that we now have a molecular structure that collects pieces and ends up making a duplicate of itself, incidental to its property functions. That's what it ends up being, a property of the chemistry. That's what happens. It's not, at least not a intentional design. It's just a aberrant property of a certain style or type of chemical formation. Just as you could have a circular chemical compound with a hollow center, and something might someday get caught in that hollow center and create some new properties that are manifested. This molecule has properties because of its linear nature, and the way it bonds with other compounds available in the environment. So anyway, you have this, and then through something called abiogenesis, some interesting circumstantial event. Lots of interesting events, no doubt, but there was one particular event where there was a mixture of chemistry, compounds that were in the vicinity of the nucleus that were necessary to the stripping of the molecule in half, the separation of the molecule, and a membrane structure of some kind, a protective structure like a bubble of water or whatever. Got some water problems here. And I don't know, maybe I gotta get across the stream. But anyway, take my pants off or something. This is just the mood for this day. So the game is on for this this thing called life now. We have a living cell in the sense that it's reproducing a structure, a DNA molecule, that's probably essential to the processing and filtering of chemical compounds to some extent. You know, the arranging of the building of compounds that might build the membrane or create some other mechanisms that filter or keep out dangerous chemistry that might break the molecule. Oh yes, it's going to be a little bit tough. I don't know. I have to think about this one. A little bit roaring, rapidy kind of thing going on here. Yeah. So, yeah. Don't know if I can do that one. I really don't want to get washed downstream. Man, it doesn't sound like any fun. So now you have the game, that this thing called life has now been born. Yeah, that's really... Yeah, that's just too much, I think. I don't think I can do it. I don't think it'd be smart to do it. I think that's the thing. You see, you slip and you fall and then you go in the water and it's cold and you hit your head on a rock or something. Maybe that's a good idea. But maybe you don't hit your head on a rock, you hit your shoulder, dislocated, and you're in pain, suffering, and all that crap. That's all no good. Damn. Yeah, there's nothing else to say, damn. That didn't work out. I just don't know if there's any other place I can cross here. Let's see, maybe a little wider over here, so maybe I can make it. There's a lot of slippery rocks, and it's not so good. Where was I? All right, so yeah, so the idea of a living thing is now born, in that you have a replicating molecule, you have the chemistry necessary to split in half, and it just keeps doing that because it splits the membrane between the two parts. And the first living thing, I speculate, might have been mechanically split in half. The cells grow to a certain size because they keep collecting more parts, and then because of the sheer weight of their dynamic, or fuck this, because of their sheer mass, the bubble breaks into two, or because some mechanical process like wave action or something else, they are broken in two, made two smaller halves. The two smaller halves again grow, and they get a certain size, they again split in half and carry with them these DNA molecules that are probably replicated in more than one. So they're probably not confined in the first cell in a nucleus, but it doesn't really matter. They might just be in the nucleus, and that might be the first membrane, is the nucleus. The first cell might have just been the nucleus, and then the outer membrane was the second development in the evolution now of the DNA molecule. So you have a molecule that basically does some of this work of creating the cell, of synthesizing the chemistry necessary to create membranes. And so this second membrane is created either by a cell absorbing a cell, like a replicating cell consumes another replicating cell, and it makes, through incidental accidental action, a double replicator. And that double replicator functions, survives, because it only has one set of DNA that's in the first membrane, and the second set of DNA is absent or not controlling in terms of function. So, yeah, a lot of mechanics to biology here. Didn't intend to do all that. So anyway, this is our origins, though. This is what it is. It's replication for the sake of replication. It's replication as a property, nothing else. Like lead is heavy, like you come up with some element like sulfur smells. DNA, replicates, and we're just stuck with the implications of that. So as time passes in this bouncing around of these cells, they probably do this thing again where it absorbs each other. So you have these eukaryotic and eukaryotic bullshitty thing where the cell now absorbs other cells that produce certain chemistry that the cell now uses, and so now it has cells inside of the cell, DNA inside of the DNA, DNA inside the original. Well, it doesn't matter. I don't want to get into all that crap. But anyway, it has the mechanics. It has a ebonics. No, well, whatever it's called. It has a, whatever that is. It has a chemical structure in the plasma of the cell that is controlling some functions of the cell, and the DNA molecule now is becoming primarily just something that is read and wrote to. So now it's basically a blueprint database. It's basically now just a database saying perform these actions in this order based on these chemical reactions, and so like a little reader goes down the molecule, and it basically does the process of splitting the molecule, dividing it, and also processing other chemistry as a reaction to what it's reading. So as it reads, it creates chemistry. The chemistry reacts with other chemistry that indicates do this, do that, do this. And there's a chain reaction of do statements, if, do kind of stuff. And we're off to the races, so to speak, in terms of any changes to that DNA molecule, changes the structure and the behavior and the reactivity of the cell. So now you have cells capable of rather rapid evolution, because changes to the DNA molecule will dictate the structure of the new dividing life form. Add in sexual reproduction, which also creates chaos, noise, changes more rapidly. And so now you have this rapid capacity to change and adapt. And we have what's called biological evolution. And through the process of 4 billion years, we can see where we came from, the little swimming fishes and such. We have seawater in our bloodstream, essentially. We're basically another membrane of protection for a DNA molecule at our core. That's the thing we're alive for, to get that into the future, to create a demonstration model of that DNA model and see if it survives the demolition derby that we ride in. And whatever cars survive the demolition derby, we make copies of those. Essentially, they win. They get to copy themselves. They go into the next competition, And we just do this over and over again for 4 billion years. And through the process, the modifications, the mutations create basically tools, survival tools. For us, it's the dominant tool is a scheming brain that can connive and wheel and deal and figure out ways to strip the skin off other beasties and gobble up their sunlight-rich flesh, or do whatever it takes. Cheat on the wife and whatever else it takes to get their DNA into the future, blah, 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 blah. And so it's all been going on for 4 billion years. Death was created as a necessary function. The first cells probably didn't die automatically. They died through brutal attrition. They got squished, but they didn't just die. They didn't just grow old and die. We do that because it's the only way replication could be sustained. Some point early in the evolutionary process, death had to be created because otherwise you'd have mass overpopulation and you'd all get suffocated out of your own, you'd be eating each other's poo and shit. You can see that sort of in funguses, really hardy life form, but they're really selective in where they grow because there's advantage in not over reproducing. And some organisms are taking advantage of that advantage by structure. The human organism really hasn't been tested as an intelligent organism. We've only existed for a couple of tens of thousands of years, and by evolutionary standards, that's nothing. We probably won't survive the test. And the real argument is, should we just concede that we're probably not going to survive, that we're probably going to debase ourselves in some disgusting manner, and maybe we should just resign gracefully and concede it's just replication for the sake of replication. It has no function. We're just torturing each other for no good reason to satisfy a DNA molecule that motivates you to eat and replicate, eat and have sex, which consequentially in dumb animals leads to replication. Those are your dominant functions, your dominant psychological motivators. And the ego is tied to the sex thing to create social infrastructure and hierarchy. It's another test for the strength of a DNA molecule. It's another testing ground. So before you get to the demolition derby, you beat up on each other a little bit first, and then you go to the real world demolition derby. It's like first you go to the U.S. demolition derby, then you move on to the nationals, and then you move on to the worlds. And that's sort of what the mechanism is. That's our whole psychology is dominated by. See, there's a little fungus. Could be all over this thing, covered with funguses. But they're smart, because if they did that, they'd become food. By being sneaky and just hanging out here and there, nobody can survive or sustain themselves on existing on them. So that's the survival strategy is, I'm going to just hide and be quiet. Anyway, enough of a video. Fuck. Oh. Until the later doke and such.